Have you ever noticed something very specific about reaching your mid-60s? There is this quiet, unspoken pride that many of us carry. It is the pride of waking up on a Saturday morning, looking out at the yard, and knowing you can still manage it all by yourself. You step into the garage. You see the heavy tools, the lawnmower, the boxes stacked on the top shelf, and you feel a deep sense of satisfaction. You are still doing things exactly the way you did them 15 years ago. When your kids come over for a visit, they might act surprised. They see you carrying a heavy bag of mulch or climbing a stepladder to clear out the gutters. They tell you to be careful. They offer to hire someone to do it for you. And usually, you just smile and wave them off. You feel capable. You feel strong. You feel like you are proving to them, and maybe to yourself, that age is just a number. But behind that quiet pride, there is a reality that very few of us want to say out loud. The truth is, in a body at 65, no longer operates by the same rulebook it did at 50. And sometimes, the very effort to keep everything exactly the same is the exact thing that accelerates the aging process. What takes our health away the fastest is rarely a sudden accident or a severe illness that comes out of nowhere. It usually starts with the habits we trust the most. It begins with the things we do every single day because we are absolutely convinced they are keeping us strong. Today, we are going to look closely at these habits. We are going to explore the things that feel right, but might actually be quietly wearing you down. Let us start with the first habit. It is something almost every hard-working, independent person does without thinking twice. It is the habit of pushing through the pain. Think about how you have lived your entire life. If you had a tough day at work, you pushed through. If you had a long drive, you drank some coffee and pushed through. And if you woke up with a stiff back or a sore shoulder, you applied the same logic. You told yourself that a body in motion stays in motion. You believed that if you just got up, moved around, and forced the joints to work, the pain would eventually walk itself off. That philosophy served you very well for decades. It made you resilient. It made you the person your family could rely on. But right around the age of 65, that philosophy stops working like it used to. In fact, it starts working against you. Imagine you are out in the yard on a beautiful afternoon. You decide to pull some stubborn weeds or move a heavy ceramic pot to the other side of the patio. You bend down, you grip, and you lift. Right at that moment, you feel a tiny tweak in your lower back or a sharp pinch in your shoulder. It is not an agonizing pain. It is just a familiar ache. The old you, the 50-year-old you, would just stretch it out for a second, take a deep breath, and finish the job. You would wake up the next morning feeling a little stiff, but by noon, you would be perfectly fine. So, you do exactly that. You finish moving the pots. You finish the yard work. You refuse to let a little ache stop you, because stopping feels like admitting defeat. Stopping feels like acting old. But here is what is actually happening beneath the surface, hidden away where you cannot see it. When we exert physical force, our muscles and tendons experience microscopic tears. This is completely normal. When we are younger, our bodies are incredibly efficient, repairing these tiny tears. The blood rushes in, the cells rebuild the tissue, and the muscle actually grows back slightly stronger. It is a beautiful, seamless system. However, as we cross into our 60s, the repair system slows down. It does not stop, but it absolutely changes its pace. The circulation is not quite as aggressive. The cellular regeneration takes longer. So, when you push through that ache in your shoulder to finish moving those heavy pots, you are not just building muscle anymore. You are accumulating damage that your body cannot clean up overnight. Because the repair process is slower, the body tries to protect the injured area the only way it knows how. It creates inflammation. Inflammation is not inherently bad. It is a natural defense mechanism. It is like the body putting a protective cast around a sprained ankle. But when you refuse to rest, when you wake up the next day and insist on doing your usual heavy tasks because you do not want to feel weak, that temporary inflammation becomes trapped. It becomes a chronic, low-grade fire, burning inside your joints and tissues. You might not even realize it is happening. You just notice that your shoulder feels stiff every single morning. You notice that it takes you 10 minutes longer to get moving. You tell yourself, well, I am just getting older. This is how it feels to age. But it is not just aging. It is the direct result of applying a young person rule to an older person body. We have to understand that our bodies are incredibly intelligent. When it sends a signal of pain or fatigue, it is not trying to annoy you. It is asking for time. It is asking for a longer window to do the invisible maintenance work that keeps you moving. But we are so conditioned to view rest as laziness. We are so terrified of losing our independence that we drown out the signals. We take an over-the-counter painkiller. We rub some ointment on the joint. And we go right back to forcing the machine to run at maximum capacity. This is why the bravest thing you can do at this stage of life is not to push through the pain. The bravest thing you can do is to stop. When you feel that tweak in your back, you put the heavy box down. You leave the yard work for tomorrow. Or, better yet, you let someone else do it. This is not surrendering to old age. This is cooperating with your body. It is shifting from a mindset of conquering your physical limits to a mindset of managing your energy. You only have a certain amount of regenerative fuel in the tank each day, and you need to spend it very wisely. If you keep spending it on unnecessary struggles, you eventually drain the reserve, and that is when a minor ache turns into a permanent injury. That is when a stiff knee turns into a mobility issue that actually does take away your independence. The irony is that by trying so hard to prove you do not need help, you push your body to the breaking point where you will eventually need help for everything. It takes a lot of wisdom to look at a task. I know you are perfectly capable of doing it, and choose not to do it anyway. It takes a quiet kind of strength to accept that your role has changed. You are no longer the heavy lifter. You are the supervisor. You are the architect. But physical exertion is only one side of the coin. The way we treat our muscles and joints is closely tied to the way we fuel them. When we start noticing these aches and pains, when we realize our energy is not what it used to be, we usually look for solutions in our kitchen. We start thinking about our diet. Many of us have spent decades hearing the same advice about food. We have been told to eat clean, cut the fat, Watch the cholesterol and keep everything as lean and green as possible. And because you are a disciplined person, you probably followed that advice. You might even pride yourself on eating much healthier than the people around you. You skip the heavy meals. You eat small portions. And you avoid anything that feels too heavy. You think you are doing your body a massive favor. You think this strict, clean eating habit is the ultimate shield against aging and disease. But just like the rule of pushing through the pain, the rules of nutrition completely flip upside down as we age. And this brings us to a truth that shocks a lot of people. The very diet that might have saved your life at 45 could be the exact thing that is starving your body at 65. Let us talk about the kitchen table. For years, the mainstream narrative around healthy eating has been entirely about subtraction. Take away the fat, cut out the extra carbohydrates, shrink the portion sizes, limit the calories. We have been conditioned to believe that if you want to live a long and healthy life, you need to eat light. You stick to your steamed vegetables, your plain toast, and your small salads. And because you are someone who takes responsibility for your health and values discipline, you likely embrace this philosophy wholeheartedly. When you go out to a restaurant with friends, and they order the heavy steak and the mashed potatoes, you quietly order the garden salad with the dressing on the side. You feel a quiet sense of control. You feel proud that you are not giving in to indulgence. But let us look at what is actually happening behind the scenes of this discipline. You step on the scale in your bathroom on a Tuesday morning, and the number is holding steady. Or maybe it has even gone down a few pounds over the last year. You smile. You think you are winning the battle against time. But then you go to the closet, and it hangs a little looser around your shoulders. When you carry the groceries up the front steps, the bags feel incredibly heavy, heavier than they did last summer. You notice that it takes a conscious, deliberate effort to push yourself up from a deep armchair. This is where the rules of the biological game fundamentally change. When you were 40 years old, carrying a few extra pounds of fat was the primary concern for your doctor and for you. But after 65, the greatest threat to your physical independence is not a little bit of extra weight. The greatest threat is the silent, invisible, and steady loss of muscle mass. We often think of muscle as something only athletes or young people need to worry about. We picture bodybuilders at the gym lifting heavy iron, but muscle is not about vanity. Muscle is your metabolic engine. It is the armor that protects your fragile skeleton. It is the shock absorber that catches you and stabilizes you. It is the metabolic sink that helps your body process blood sugar and keep your system balanced. As we age, a very subtle but powerful shift happens in our biology. Our bodies become significantly less efficient at taking the food we eat and turning it into muscle tissue. There is a natural resistance that builds up in the cells over time. This means that if you eat the exact same small, light, low-protein meal at 65 that you ate at 45, your body is no longer extracting enough raw material to maintain your physical frame. So, what does the body do? The human body is brilliant, and it is a pure survivor. If it is not getting enough fuel and protein from your daily diet to keep your vital organs functioning and your system running, it starts borrowing from its own internal reserves. It quietly begins to break down your own muscle tissue to survive. You are quite literally shrinking from the inside out, all while believing you are eating the perfect, clean, disciplined diet. Many people find themselves deeply trapped in this cycle without ever realizing it. They feel a bit weak, so they assume they are just getting old. Because they are less active, they lose their appetite, so they eat even less. They stick to a small bowl of plain oatmeal for breakfast, half a sandwich for lunch, and some clear soup for dinner. It feels clean. It feels safe. It feels like they are doing the right thing. But it is actually starvation disguised as discipline. You have to stop starving your armor. This is the stage in your life when you need substance. You need high-quality protein. And you need more of it than you probably think. You need the eggs. You need the chicken. You need the fish. The beans. The rich, nourishing foods that give your body the exact building blocks it is begging for. We have to let go of the old fear of food. We have to shift our mindset from trying to shrink our bodies to trying to fortify them. Because a fragile body is a vulnerable body, and a fortified body is one that can withstand the natural bumps and bruises of getting older. And speaking of vulnerability, there is another place where we strip away our own strength and peace of mind. We do not do it in the kitchen, but we do it in the bedroom. This brings us to the third habit you need to stop right now. It is the habit of fighting your own sleep. Let me paint a picture that might feel entirely too familiar. It is 10 o'clock at night. You turn off the television. You lock the front door. You make sure the porch light is off. And you get into bed. This is your routine. You have always needed your solid 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep to feel human and productive the next day. You close your eyes. You settle in. And eventually, you drift off into a peaceful sleep. But then, suddenly, your eyes snap open. You look over at the glowing red numbers on the clock on your nightstand. It is exactly 3 in the morning. The house is completely silent. The street outside is dark and still, and you are wide awake. Immediately, a subtle sense of panic sets in. You do the mental math in your head. You have only been asleep for 5 hours. You tell yourself, I need to get back to sleep right now. If I do not get back to sleep, my whole day tomorrow is going to be ruined. I am going to be exhausted. My immune system is going to drop. My memory is going to suffer. I am going to feel terrible. So you lie there. You squeeze your eyes shut. You toss over to the left side and adjust the pillow. 10 minutes later, you flip to the right side and kick off a blanket. You try to force your brain to shut down. You get frustrated. You get angry at your own body for failing to do the one natural thing it is supposed to do. Some nights, the frustration gets so overwhelming that you reach into the drawer for a sleeping pill, hoping to forcefully knock the system back offline. Here is what you really need to understand about this scenario. That anxiety, that mounting frustration, that endless tossing and turning, that emotional reaction is doing far more damage to your health than the simple fact that you woke up at 3 in the morning. Just like your muscles change their rules, the architecture of your sleep fundamentally changes as you cross into your mid-60s and beyond. Our internal clocks, our deep circadian rhythms, begin to shift their timing. The heavy, unbroken phases of deep sleep naturally become slightly shorter, and our sleep naturally becomes more fragmented. This is not a disease. This is not a medical malfunction that needs to be cured. It is simply a biological evolution. Many older adults naturally shift toward a pattern where they sleep for a solid 5 or 6 hours at night, and their body perfectly expects to take a deeply restorative rest or a nap in the early afternoon. But because we live in a society that preaches that you must sleep 8 unbroken hours in the dark to be considered healthy, we view this natural biological shift as a terrifying problem. When you lie in bed trying to force yourself to sleep, your brain registers the frustration. It interprets your anxiety as a literal threat. And what does the body do when it senses a threat in the environment? It releases cortisol, the primary stress hormone. Cortisol elevates your heart rate. It slightly raises your blood pressure. It tells your nervous system to stay alert because danger is nearby. You are literally triggering a physiological fight or flight response while lying perfectly still under your own warm blankets. By trying to force the old sleep pattern to work, you turn your bed into a battleground. You accidentally associate your bedroom with stress and failure. And over time, this chronic nighttime stress wears down your heart, sours your mood, and blunts your cognitive sharpness much faster than a few hours of missed sleep ever could. You have to stop fighting the night. If you wake up at 3 in the morning and sleep is nowhere to be found, do not lie there and suffer in the dark. Accept the wakefulness. Give yourself full permission to be awake. Get out of bed. Walk into the living room. Keep the lamps low and soft. Read a chapter of a good book. Listen to a quiet radio program. Look out the window. Enjoy the absolute peace and profound quiet of a house that is entirely yours for those few stolen hours. When you stop fighting the wakefulness, the anxiety disappears almost instantly. The cortisol drops back down to a baseline level, and very often, an hour or so later, the natural wave of tiredness will wash over you. You can simply walk back to bed and fall naturally back to sleep. If that wave does not come, that is perfectly fine too. You will have a hot cup of coffee. You will go about your morning routine, and you will take a glorious, guilt-free nap at 2 in the afternoon. You are not failing at sleep. You are not broken. Your body is just gently asking for a new schedule, and learning to listen to that request, rather than fighting it with anxiety and pills, is one of the most profoundly healing things you can do for your entire nervous system. But this constant friction between what we think we should do and what our bodies actually need right now does not just happen in the kitchen or in the bedroom. It happens in the way we handle our daily physical discomforts. And perhaps most importantly, it happens in how we define our personal boundaries. We often build invisible walls around ourselves to feel safe and secure, without ever realizing that those very walls are slowly suffocating our minds and our spirits. This leads us directly to the final 2 habits, which might be the most deeply ingrained and the most quietly dangerous of all. We have talked about how we push our muscles too hard. We have talked about how we accidentally starve our bodies by eating too lightly. And we have explored the lonely battleground we create when we try to force our sleep. But there is another habit that is so deeply woven into our daily lives that we do not even realize we are doing it. It happens in the small moments. It happens when you are standing up from a chair or walking up a flight of stairs. This brings us to the fourth habit. You must stop. It is the habit of silently hiding your physical discomfort and sweeping it all under the rug of old age. Picture this scenario. You are at a family gathering. You have been sitting on the couch for an hour talking to your grandchildren. When it is time to get up and move to the dining table, you put your hands on your knees and push yourself up. As you do, a sharp, grinding pain shoots through your right hip. You wince. You close your eyes for a fraction of a second. Your daughter happens to be watching. She walks over and asks if your hip is bothering you again. And what do? You instantly straighten your posture. You put on a brave face. You smile and say, "Oh, it is nothing at all. I am completely fine. It is just old age." We say that phrase so often, it has become an automatic reflex. It is just old age. We use it to explain away the stiff knee, the lingering backache, the sudden dizzy spell, or the constant fatigue. We use it because we want to reassure our loved ones that there is no emergency. But more importantly, we use it to reassure ourselves. We think that by ignoring the pain, we are being stoic. We think that complaining about every little ache makes us a burden. But hiding your pain is not a virtue. It is actually one of the most dangerous things you can do to your body at this stage of life. When you were younger, if you had a sharp pain in your knee, you knew exactly what caused it. You twisted it, playing a sport, or you bumped it on a table. The cause and the effect were clear. But as we get older, our biological alarm system changes. The signals become a little more muted. A dull, lingering ache that you brush off as normal stiffness might actually be the early stage of a degenerative joint issue. It might be a sign of systemic inflammation. It might be a minor hairline fracture that you did not even realize happened. When you hide these signals and refuse to look into them, you are ignoring the dashboard warning lights on your own vehicle. Think about how many people end up needing major, invasive surgeries because they spent 5 years ignoring a minor problem that could have been fixed with simple physical therapy or a small adjustment in their daily shoes. By pretending everything is perfectly fine, you rob yourself of the opportunity for early intervention. You let a small, manageable spark turn into a massive fire that eventually burns down your mobility. You have to stop hiding your pain. You have to stop using age as a universal excuse for every single discomfort. Yes, the body changes. Yes, some wear and tear is inevitable. But chronic, daily pain is not a mandatory requirement for turning 65. If something hurts consistently, acknowledge it. Talk about it. Let your doctor know. Let your family know. Admitting that your knee hurts when it rains, or that you can no longer comfortably reach the top shelf, does not mean you are weak. It means you are a responsible caretaker of your own body. It means you are paying attention. True independence is not pretending you never need help. True independence is knowing exactly when to ask for a small amount of help today, so you do not require a massive amount of help tomorrow. And this desire to stay safe, to protect our image and maintain our comfort, bleeds into the fifth, and perhaps the most heartbreaking habit of all. It is a habit that does not attack the body. but slowly and quietly suffocates the mind. The fifth habit you must stop is the intentional shrinking of your own world. Think back to how large your world used to be. You used to drive all over the city. You used to try new restaurants on a whim. You navigated unfamiliar airports, learned how to use new tools, and constantly solved unexpected problems. Your life was full of friction, and that friction kept you incredibly sharp. But slowly, year by year, you started to edit things out. It usually happens under the disguise of convenience. You decide that driving across town is just too much of a hassle, so you only shop at the grocery store that is 5 minutes away. You stop trying out new recipes because it is just easier to cook the same 4 meals you know by heart. When a friend invites you to visit a new neighborhood, you politely decline. You tell yourself you just prefer the peace and quiet of your own home. You build a beautiful, comfortable, incredibly predictable bubble around yourself. You know exactly where everything is. You know exactly what happens at every hour of the day. There are no surprises. There is no stress. It feels like absolute safety. But neurologically speaking, absolute safety is a slow poison. The human brain is a remarkable machine, but it operates on a very strict policy of use it or lose it. To keep your neural pathways thick, fast, and healthy, your brain requires novel experiences. It needs to figure things out. It needs to be slightly confused. It needs the mild, healthy stress of navigating a street it has never seen before, or learning the rules of a game it has never played. When you lock yourself into an airtight routine, when you do the exact same things in the exact same order every single day, your brain goes on autopilot. It realizes that it no longer needs to build new connections because nothing new is ever happening. So, it begins to conserve energy. It starts pruning away the unused neural pathways. The physical structure of your brain actually begins to weaken. This is why people who retire and completely withdraw from the world often experience a rapid, devastating decline in their cognitive sharpness. It is not because their brains were destined to fail. It is because they stopped giving their brains a reason to stay strong. You have to break out of the bubble. You have to actively invite a little bit of beautiful friction back into your daily life. This does not mean you need to go skydiving or travel to a foreign country. The friction can be wonderfully simple. Drive a completely different route to the pharmacy, just to force your brain to map out a new visual landscape. Buy a vegetable at the market that you have never eaten in your entire life. Bring it home and figure out how to cook it. Read a book about a subject you know absolutely nothing about. Strike up a conversation with a stranger and truly listen to a perspective that challenges your own. Allow yourself to be a beginner again. Allow yourself to feel a little bit clumsy and a little bit unsure. That feeling of uncertainty, that slight mental struggle, is the exact feeling of your brain building new armor. It is the feeling of life expanding instead of shrinking. When we look back at all of these habits, a very clear picture emerges. Pushing through the pain, starving yourself to stay thin, fighting your natural sleep, hiding your daily aches, and shrinking your world. Every single one of these habits comes from a place of fear. They come from a desperate desire to cling to the past, to freeze time, and to prove that we are still the exact same people we were 20 years ago. But aging is not a defeat. It is a transition into a different kind of mastery. Your body at 65 is not a broken version of your 30-year-old body. It is an entirely different vehicle. It has a different engine, a different suspension system, and it requires a completely different kind of driver. If you try to drive it the way you did when you were young, forcing it to run on empty, ignoring its warning signs, and driving it straight into the ground, it will break down. But if you learn to listen to it, if you feed it the nourishment it is begging for, if you respect its need for rest without guilt, if you speak truthfully about what hurts, and if you keep its horizons wide and open, if you do these things, this vehicle will carry you through a beautiful, profound, and deeply independent chapter of your life. The struggle ends the exact moment you stop fighting your own biology and start cooperating with it. You have spent your entire life taking care of other people, solving other people's problems, and carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. It is time to turn that profound wisdom and that fierce dedication inward. Listen to the quiet signals. Adjust the rules. Feed the armor. Step outside the bubble. Your body is ready to support you for the long journey ahead. All it asks is that you finally agree to meet it exactly where it is today.